But the baby was breech and things went south very fast. And my body was not cooperating and the baby just could not get out. So it was very difficult because I felt that my body was partly to blame for the reason this baby was denied, deprived of enough oxygen. And so he passed away. He was, I've forgotten the medical term for it, but he just didn't have sufficient oxygen and couldn't be revived. So it's important to know that I never saw that baby. I never held the baby. They just whisked the baby away. And that was in 1976. But I didn't properly grieve that baby until I was sitting in a class in 2008. Look how long that was, in a class on death and dying in college. And somebody was minimizing the loss of a neonatal or new stillborn child or even a miscarriage. And I spontaneously just lost it. And I don't cry in front of people, very, very rarely. But it just all came out. And I explained, it doesn't matter how long you've known a child. It's a deep, deep loss.
Hey, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Trauma Uncensored. I'm your host, Brooke Shearer. We've got another great episode for you today, which we will jump into shortly. If you're a regular listener of this podcast, thank you for your continued support. And if this is your first time listening, I'm so glad you found us. This podcast was created as a safe space for community, connection, resources, and support for anyone navigating trauma, grief, mental health, or pain. Here, your experiences are both valid and valued. Your story matters, and it's important to know you are not walking this path alone. It is my hope that each episode helps you feel more connected and reminds you that it is possible to not only live, but to truly thrive after hardship. Trauma Uncensored began as an extension of my own healing journey following immense trauma. The course of my life changed in the fall of 2015 and led to the tragic death of our 9-year-old son, Logan, in 2016 due to a distracted driver whose reckless choice behind the wheel led to the crash. In the time since Logan was taken from us, I have fought for my mental health and for my survival. That fight has led me down an unexpected path of discovery, healing, and recovery. It has given me the tools to sit here today and share these conversations with you. If you're new to the Trauma Uncensored podcast, I invite you to start with episode 1 titled The Crash. In that episode, I share the beginning of my story, which provides important context for the conversations and guest stories that follow. Speaking of guests, we believe our listeners' voices matter deeply, and we welcome those who wish to share their experiences. If interested, click on the submission link in our show notes below, email hello@traumauncensored.com, or reach out through any of our social platforms. Just be sure to include the word guest in your submission. All show information, resources, and links can also be found in the show notes. Be sure to follow us on our social media platforms and subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube. And if this podcast speaks to you, and I'm sure it will, we would truly appreciate you leaving a review. Before we begin, a quick and important disclaimer. This podcast discusses topics related to grief, loss, trauma, mental health challenges, survival, and more. While I have gained deep personal experience in these areas, I am not a therapist, and this show is not intended as a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. So stay tuned for another installment of Trauma Uncensored, where, as always, we're healing out loud.
Trauma Uncensored.
Trauma Uncensored. Trauma Uncensored.
It's been several years since her little daughter died. Her little daughter was adorable, and I know she was the heart and soul of this mother. I get that. But please don't tell people Please don't tell people that if you meet a parent who's had a child that's died, to treat them with a special reverence because they've been chosen by God.
Oh boy.
To go this really difficult. I'm like, fucking you, this is not the grief Olympics. Stop that.
I like that phrase, actually, the grief, because we actually talk a lot about that type of shit.
I will use that phrase in here. I will not mention her, but I'm, and you probably know this about me, but I'm extremely empathetic. I get it. I know what this feels like. I know how awful it is. And I'm going to read this quote just so you know. It's on my website, and it just pretty much says everything about, about healing and the choice that we have. And it's just brilliant. I think this woman is a psychologist. She says, "Who are you if your story begins to change? Do not be so loyal to your suffering that your healing doesn't stand a chance."
I love it. Oh, that should be a t-shirt.
Yeah, it should be a t-shirt.
It should definitely be a t-shirt. I'm recording all this too, so I can figure out. Well, it's good because sometimes the nuggets there are just as many good nuggets before we start as there are once we're rolling. So like that is a great way to segue into introducing you. So I would like to introduce everyone to Marla Grant. Marla is a dear friend of ours, very dear. In fact, we met through a friend of a mutual friend in 2016, right after Logan had passed away. And at the time, Marla was the leader of a group in Tampa called Helping Parents Heal. Mm-hmm. And we met Marla. I spoke to Marla before we officially met her, but we met her just a shy 2 months after Logan passed away. 2 months. And I'm eager to talk about some of that as well. But before we get into all of that, Marla is both an explorer and a guide. She understands that deep self-inquiry is necessary to meet the challenge of overcoming debilitating grief, and she knows how to gently and expertly guide you to her own healing discovery. To your own healing discovery. Fortunately, yet unfortunately, I know Marla through the shared circumstances of having lost a child. However, for Marla, she's not lost just one, but she's lost 3. And every time I talk about you, Marla, and I tell people she didn't, just lose one, she lost 3. It's just, it weighs so heavy on everyone's hearts because I can't even imagine. And I've lost one. But for Marla, providing healing guidance from the painful experience of loss is at the center of her work. Her mission is to guide you to your own innate ability to heal from any grief event, to regain a sense of peace and wholeness, to know that you are worthy and capable of happiness in spite of difficulties or the negative influence of others. And I would love to just share that you have been that beacon of light for us, for me specifically, for such a long time. I mean, I remember our coffee dates in Tampa before we moved, our conversations, and it's been, 9.5 years almost. And here you are still, one of my biggest supporters and one of my biggest, you influence me a tremendous amount. And so I'm so excited to have you on the show today, Marla. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here. I was so happy to reconnect with you recently. And of course, I love your podcast. I've watched many of your episodes. And I just want to say, if I can just kind of think back to that time when I met you and Jordan, I'm thinking of it in the context of where you are now. And that's such a strong, powerful example of what can happen in spite of deep, awful, debilitating grief. I mean, you've just become a model of that. I mean, I remember when you walked into that first meeting where I met you in person, and it's very much it's like this for many people who've had a recent loss. It's almost like you can touch them and their bodies would just fall apart. I mean, you were shattered inside and out, and you can feel that. I mean, I'm pretty grounded usually now when I've been through this and, through my work and my own healing, but still when I meet parents for the first time, it's, we have these mirror neurons that project what we feel. And so when someone is in that very deep, heavy state of grief and loss, I can feel that. And so, but at the same time, I knew where you could end up. And I think from day one, you were beginning to move in that direction. You can always kind of tell the people who are going to pick up the concepts that are helpful and watch others. Because by that time, our group had been together long enough that there were parents in there who'd been devastated, who were kind of still a little bit on that line where they were still partially devastated, but seeing the light that there could be something different. And I could see that you picked up on that, and you subsequently just carried on and, did so many things. And, I want to say this too, that every single type of loss is different. And when you have one like yours, where you had to relive it for so many years afterwards.
It's not even been a year. It's not even been a year since it finally wrapped up.
I know. It's just incredible. And remind me to get back to that also, because, let me touch on this now, but because people say to me, it's sometimes hard for me to tell people I've had 3 children pass, not because I find it difficult to talk about, but because I know how it's perceived by other people. And the truth is, my loss is no greater than anyone else's. I would never say, people are surprised to hear me say that I don't know that I would say losing a child is the worst thing that can happen to somebody. I've mentioned to you before that I don't engage in the grief Olympics. Let me first clarify. Yes, losing a child is kind of a special kind of hell, because we do feel that their care, their safety is up to us. But, life happens. Everything, is out of our control. Most things are out of our control. So, I think about people who, for instance, have had a child kidnapped.
Oh my gosh.
Abducted.
Oh no.
And, oh no. I know. That's what I say. That to me, you would not be talking to the same person that you're talking to today if that had happened to me, because I'm the kind of person who needs, I can't have
answers and closure.
Yes.
Yep.
I can't have that weighing on my mind every day. Would be killing me. I think of the people in Gaza. I think the people in many, many other marginalized places that have horrible things going on. Ukraine. I don't want to get political, but all you have to do is turn on the news.
Yep.
There's all kinds of hell happening everywhere. I don't have a lock on agony and grief. So there's the biggest value there is to people knowing that I had 3 children who died, is to see what can happen from that. And so I'll tell you this little story, if I can, about I was before I started my work as a grief recovery specialist, before I actually started seeing clients, I was in meditation one day, and I was talking to my guides and asking, what do I need to do to make sure that I am helping them as much as possible? And they said, just get really clear on what helped you heal the most. And so, I've been able to focus on that. And those 3 principles really have to do with personal responsibility, acceptance, and willingness. And they actually, it makes a handy little acronym that's really easy to remember. And it's PAW. Yeah. And so, so the personal responsibility piece is all about you have to own your own healing. Nobody can do it for you.
Mm-hmm.
You can't. And it's also not up to anybody else to tell you how to do it, because it's different for every single person. It's everyone's loss is unique, and their healing is also unique. And so, I mean, you may remember specific people in the Tampa group who I always think of one in particular who she just made it a point from the moment her son died to read everything possible she could about the afterlife, because she wanted to know everything. And her healing just, she was, and when I say healing, I'm not talking about being okay that your child died. It doesn't mean that. It means learning how to put that loss in its place and understand that you have a present moment life it's going to be different. And it's your responsibility to figure out what that's going to look like.
Yep. That's beautiful. I mean, being able, that's what I talk about a lot, as I'm sure, you've heard since you listened to or follow the podcast. But, the goal isn't to just try to get by day to day after a loss or a traumatic event. It's to, learn how to walk alongside it. It's not getting over it, or it's not just surviving day to day until you're dead. It's learning how to you still have a life left here to live, right? And I choose now. It hasn't, and that's another disclaimer I'm going to throw out here in a second. But I choose now to carpe diem the shit out of every single moment, every day, every experience, right? And does it mean that, I don't ever get annoyed or pissed off or sad or upset? No, but I choose to see the joy and the positivity, and stay out of things that are going to be toxic to me, or don't watch things or follow things that are going to be toxic to me. And, stay knowledgeable about things, but not let it send me down the rabbit hole, and that's the thing too. You mentioned that, you knew, and from day one, you could see that I was evolving and all of these things. But I also have to remind people that it has taken literal hell for me to get where I sit today. Right. And the thing is that it's not linear. Right. So in the beginning, when I first met Marla, it's not linear. I was doing really well for a long time. And then, I wouldn't say a long time, for, about 3 years. And then I crashed big time. And then I came up some, and I was surviving, right? I was moving. And then I super hit rock bottom, to where it is, it really truly is a miracle that I'm sitting here talking today. And from fighting for it, from trying to just holding on one more day, one more moment, one more minute, I was guided. I feel like I was guided to the resources that I needed at that time, that were ready for me at that time, to make that shift. So it's something to remember.
That's a super important point. It's why I talk about healing at the intersection of the world of spirit and the world of form, because in the Helping Parents Heal group that we belong to, and that the reason I said you started immediately on your healing journey was that when you moved away from Tampa, you began, you got more involved in helping parents heal in more of a leadership capacity. That's a perfect example of personal responsibility, because that wasn't just about other people healing. That was a healing move for yourself. Right. Where was I going with that? What did you say just before?
I said a lot of things.
There's so much that my brain is exploding. But the point is, the stages. You were talking about linear healing. Please, if people tell you there are stages of grief, please just politely ignore what they said. Healing is not a linear, stage-driven process. The whole Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, bless her heart, she did wonderful work. Even she said she never meant for that to be overlaid onto the condition of grief.
It puts a timeline on things. It puts a timeline and a formulation
yes. And
that is not realistic.
It's exactly what you said. I was fine, and then I wasn't fine, and I was really not fine. And then it's exactly like waves. Sometimes the sea is really flat. Sometimes the waves are really high. You'll have really great days. And sometimes you get dumped down into that trough and you never know. I mean, I'll give you a really good example. I'm a volunteer medical courier, and I pick up stem cells and bone marrow, and I deliver it to transplant patients. Excuse me. And a few weeks ago, I delivered to Children's Hospital.
Just ignore them. I'm going to have Mallory come get them.
That's okay. I'm going to have Matt walking by here any minute.
This is what they do. And you know what? Everybody listening just wants to hear the dogs instead of you, you know?
Great. So anyway, I think this is the first time in 16, 17 years this has happened. But I walked into this place where I was delivering the cells, and the entire layout was almost identical to the hospital where my daughter died. She had leukemia. And it's involuntary. You know, you've heard of the book, The Body Keeps the Score.
Yeah, a few times.
It does. It's in there. It can be triggered at any moment. And I could, for a moment, I couldn't talk to the text that I was delivering this product to, because everything about that environment, I was like right there with my daughter.
It's palpable, right?
It's very physically palpable. So yes, that's a real thing that absolutely happens. But so just please know, nobody gets you to tell you when your grieving should stop, what course it should take, how you should feel. It's all very personal. And even though we want this, healing for our loved ones, it's that personal responsibility piece. They have to do it on their own. And if they don't, then we have decisions to make, which brings me to, what happens. God, my mind is going in 100 different directions here.
I'm so glad you're so excited. Just a side note for the people listening, Marla she has so much to say, and there are so many enriching stories and opportunities for, new tools and resources and understanding and just wisdom that this is definitely going to be a multi-episode event with Marla. So we've only got an hour this morning as we record, but she will be back and we will continue. So we will continue on. So you just pick at it as you want, because this is all such great information. And I do want you to get, before you get too far into the work and everything, I really would love for you to tell us about yourself and tell us about your beautiful children. You have 3 across the veil and 1 still here that, I love seeing photos of you guys together and all the things. You have 2. I'm sorry.
Okay.
That is my bad. We could.
We can keep track.
I'm sorry. I thought there was only 1. I know you've got 5 kids.
I will move into that. They deserve, it's an important concept too, but you mentioned the word wisdom, and I've been writing some notes here. And one of the things that came to me in my meditation around the same time that I got the paw message was, I was contemplating, losing 1 child, that's bad enough. And losing 2 is not good. But 3, by the time I lost my 3rd child, I was like, what is going on here? Really? So this kind of brings me to the second part of paw, which is accept. Mm. And when I contemplated that and realized how important acceptance was, it's this whole idea of stop asking why. That's not the question. We're never going to know. We're never going to get the answer to why until we pass. And then we'll see the big picture at 30,000 feet. We get to know everything. But that's not going to help you, because even if you got an answer, you would still say, well, why that? So stop asking why. The question you need to ask is what? What am I meant to do with this? And that's when I realized, oh, this was all the training ground for me. Because one might not have done it, and maybe even two, but three, I'm paying attention.
Yeah. And that's essential. Can you imagine people, because I say the same thing, right? I'm like, I believe in so much more than just the black and the white of birth and death.
Oh,
right. I believe the many shades of gray. And when I tell people that I believe Logan's purpose for this lifetime was so much, is so far beyond just him being here for 9 years and being, this happy-go-lucky little boy that brought so much light to people. There is a purpose, right? I do believe that there is a purpose, and it is my opportunity to figure out what some of that purpose is.
oh
Like,
yeah,
I believe Jordan has that opportunity too. I believe Mallory has her own opportunity through it.
for sure.
That Logan's given us this gift. Even Mila, who, hasn't met him here on earth, but I believe that I'm supposed to carry forward with it. I have accepted that Logan has passed, and you're exactly right. What do I do that helps? For me, it's helping people, right? It's the giving the meaning. I mean, and I've tried to find it. And when I landed on this, I'm like, maybe this podcast,
but
and what it's going to lead to is it.
Yeah, but you can't possibly help other people if you haven't also been willing to do your own work, because then
Absolutely.
then
1000%.
wrong message comes out, and you and I have talked about that wrong message. I want to say first that, well, I kind of alluded to this before, that yes, child loss is awful, but we don't have a lock on grief, and it's unfair to people who are experiencing all kinds of other grief in the world for us to claim the gold medal of the grief Olympics. That's not how this works. I would not say to someone who'd lived with the love of their life for 50 years and then that person died, I would not say that my grief is any worse than theirs. I have no basis for that at all. So our grief is what it is,
And thank you for bringing that up, because there are a lot of people out there who, have come to me. I know they've come to you and said, well, I've not lost a child, so I can't, or I don't know what, mine's not as big of a deal as yours. And I'm like, stop. I've got a friend, Amy, who, she lost her beloved dog and her mother around the same time. And she's, she listens to this and she goes, I feel like such a, crybaby or a whiny person or something, because I'm like, stop, because your grief also matters. It doesn't matter. You lost your mom, and our dogs are our pets. You bet your ass I'm going to grieve when my dogs die.
Call me
for
one
sure.
time. She had, I don't know how she got my name, but it was when I was really involved with Helping Parents Heal. And she said, she was in tears, and she said, I know you work with parents who've lost children, and she said, but I just lost my cat that I had for 18 years. And I let her cry, and I listened to her, and I said exactly what you said. Oh my gosh, that was like, she had no children. That was her child. Am I going to tell her pain doesn't matter and that her loss is minimal? No. So,
and it is important, I think, to point out too, that after having lost a child or lost a spouse or having a significant loss or trauma, it is human and acceptable in the beginning to also be like, don't come to me and tell me that you lost a cat, because that, so there is that grace in it. So I would hate for people to think, oh, well, I have to accept them losing this when I lost this. Well, no, you don't.
A lot of it is about being empathetic and sort of being aware of what you're saying.
Right.
It isn't that newly grieving parents don't care about your loss. It's
Mhm.
that we can't think of anything else except that we've just
Right.
dumped into this deep, dark hole. So this is a really good segue for me to talk about my kids. So the first child I lost was I was young. I'd had my first son, who's now living in Atlanta. And by the way, he's a very good example of someone who's taken a lot of the pain of life and done amazing healing work, difficult, dark night of the soul kind of healing work. And now that was all the training ground for him to do the kind of work he's doing with men. And he's wonderful at it. He's just really excellent. So the second child, my first one he was a cesarean section. And by the way, I was given last rites when he was born because I got preeclampsia and was very, very sick. And he was a preemie, but he did fine. He grew up. He's wonderful, and I get to spend Christmas with him. Yay! Okay, and then I was overseas at the time. I was in Australia. He was born in a wonderful teaching hospital. The second pregnancy was in a private hospital in one of the suburbs of Sydney that did not have emergency services, which is an important point. My doctor was letting me have a trial labor to see, if maybe I could just have it naturally. But the baby was breech and things went south very fast. And my body was not cooperating and the baby just could not get out. So it was very difficult because I felt that my body was partly to blame for the reason this baby was denied, deprived of enough oxygen. And so he passed away. He was, I forgot the medical term for it, but he just didn't have sufficient oxygen and couldn't be revived. So it's important to know that I never saw that baby. I never held the baby. They just whisked the baby away. And that was in 1976. And it was all the way, well, two milestones happened after that. I really did not grieve properly for that baby because I didn't know that many people in Australia. And I did get pregnant 12 weeks later. I'll get back to that in a minute. But I didn't properly grieve that baby until I was sitting in a class in 2008. Look how long that was, in a class on death and dying in college. And somebody was minimizing the loss of a neonatal or new stillborn child or even a miscarriage. And I spontaneously just lost it. And I don't cry in front of people, very, very rarely, but it just all came out. And I explained, it doesn't matter how long you've known a child, it's a deep, deep loss. And so for that child, I went through emotions of, deep feeling of vacancy and emptiness, and I was deprived of what I was carrying for 9 months. It was just huge. And then I had the final piece of healing around that loss just this past 12 months. My younger sister, who of course was living in the US at the time, didn't know the details of that loss and asked me, and I told her. And I never really was angry at the medical staff for not letting me hold or see the baby, but I always questioned it and thought it was kind of unenlightened of them. Until my little sister, who is a nurse, said to me in a sweetest way, she said, "Marla, they really did you a favor not letting the baby, because it was a horrible delivery. It was a forceps delivery. I mean, they had to do everything possible to try and get that baby out because my, not to be too graphic, but my cervix was contracted and just wouldn't open. And so the baby was damaged. I'm sure the baby was not, and she was saying you would not have wanted to see the baby. And it was in that moment that I could finally let all of that, all the pieces that might have kept me from full healing, I could just let it go.
That's so interesting. If I can interject just for a second, because, you're telling the story and I'm sitting here going, God, not being able to see that child that's got to be trauma in and of itself. But then you bring up this point of,
You don't
the
we don't know.
damage, right?
We don't
And
know what we don't know.
right. Well, I mean, I could use that as a comparison to the day of our crash
Sure.
because I saw everything
I know.
and Jordan saw nothing. And, my mom has always said to me, because I've been like, why did I have to see him on the side of the road? Why did I have to see my child dead? Why do I have all of these memories and these visuals stuck in my brain? And my mom would say, because just like you were mentioning earlier at the beginning of the show, she'd say, you're the type of person who needs to know. You need to know the answers. And I'm going, I mean, yes. And, I'm glad Jordan didn't get to see it because I would never want him living with those images. And then you turn over and you've got Jordan, who's always struggled with the fact that I carry all of that and he can't do anything for me. He can't take it from me. And I'm sure that there is a part of him that wishes he could have seen his son that day. Right. So it's like it's a mind fuck is really what it is. It's like, be damned if you do, be damned if you don't. You're still living with something.
We all have a master judge, and that judge will try to screw with us no matter what happens.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to jump for a moment to my son who died by suicide. I'll get back to him in a minute, but this is a good point to make right now. When I found out he had shot himself, I could not bring myself to have that be the last image I had of him. I just couldn't. And so I asked my oldest son, who was very close to him, if he would do it for me. And he of course said yes. And I don't think it was overly traumatic for him, although I have many times regretted. I mean, I just like what you said. It's like I've many times regretted that I made Brennan be exposed to that image.
I'm sure.
And at the same time, I'm really glad that the last memory I have of my son Ryan is standing at the back of my car at Dulles, giving him a hug goodbye. So either way, we have this master judge. This is what I was telling you positive intelligence is all about. Our master judge is always constantly finding ways to blame us, to make us feel bad, to tell us we should have done this. Why didn't you do that? Or that person is awful. So yeah, it doesn't matter what we do. It's our job to learn to just quiet that voice and accept that, okay, this is the way things happen. So let me get back to the baby. So 12 weeks after the baby died, I got pregnant again. And my doctor didn't believe it. I said, I'm telling you, I'm pregnant. And that baby is now the son who lives abroad, abroad most of his life. But from the time he was born, I mean, I'm very close to both of my sons, but from the time this one was born, he was, I could tell I knew it was the same baby. I'm the soul of the same child. I just knew it. He was really, really attached to me. He didn't want anything to do with anybody else for the longest time. And now he's like, he's not that way at all. He's certainly not a mama's boy, but I knew that. And then many years later, Suzanne Giesman.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So she found out I had lost 3 children, and she called me and said, do you want to read it? And I'm like, of course I want to read it. So she brought through Nicole and Ryan in very evidential ways. And then she said, is there a twin? And I'm like, and I thought maybe she was talking about Ryan because Ryan had named his daughter Ryan Renee. And she said, no, that's not it. And I hadn't told her anything. And so I told her about the baby and about Shane being born. And she said, that's why I can't read him over there, because he's already back here. Like, yes, I knew that.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it was super validating. So fast forward to 1981, and my sweet daughter, Nicole, was born. We were living in Saudi Arabia at the time. And when she was about 7 years old, she was diagnosed with leukemia, which was a gut punch. I was like, I don't even know how this is possible. We got sent back to the U.S. For her diagnosis and subsequently for her treatment, and she received a bone marrow transplant from, of all people, Shane, the replacement. I hate to call him the replacement baby, but just for expedience sake.
That's going to cause trauma for him too if you call him that. Yeah.
He does.
Mhm.
Well, anyway, he was delighted. He was only 12, but he went through the process and he donated marrow for her. And she had 6 super healthy, wonderful years. And she reminds me, when you describe Logan, she reminds me of him because she was light, bright, happy spirit, just an amazing little child.
Listen, Billy Joel wasn't wrong. Only the good die young. Billy Joel was not wrong. I think about that a lot, actually. I'm like,
yeah, she was just such a joy. And so anyway, quite unexpectedly, because usually if you make it to 5 years after a bone marrow transplant, you're pretty much, in good shape. But just as she was entering the 6th year, she relapsed with a much worse type of leukemia, a more aggressive type. Shane donated cells again, but it wasn't enough, and she passed just after her 14th birthday. So yeah, it was just after her 14th birthday. So I'm gonna move to Ryan, and then I want to tell you what the difference was in the things I experienced afterwards. So Ryan and Nicole, Ryan was born just 16 months after Nicole. So they were super, super close. They were like, people thought they were twins. So they grew up doing everything together. So when she died, it was a huge, huge impact on Ryan, but I don't think and of course we talked about her all the time. And I would ask him how he's doing, and once in a while he would cry a little bit, but I only found out years later that there was a lot of his pain that he had hidden from me because he thought that this is such a big mistake everybody makes. He thought if he brought her up to me that it would remind me of her and make me sad.
mm-hmm.
I can assure everyone, and you will know this, there is not a moment of the day that you're not thinking about your child and aware that they're physically not present with you. So talk about people's children.
Exactly.
Please don't ever hesitate.
Ignoring them is actually more painful than...
Oh, much more painful.
Mm-hmm.
So, but there was so much I didn't understand about grief at the time. And I don't want to get into it because it's its whole topic now, but there's a whole list of myths about grief and the way we deal with it that I can go into at another time. But Ryan also had some existential issues going on, I think, with his own existence and he used to have this really far away look in his eyes, like he only had one foot in this life and one foot somewhere else. I used to have to tell him, look at me straight in the eyes. Even when he was little, it was like he was somewhere else. So anyway, eventually it all caught up to him. And it was less than a year, I think, after he'd had a little girl that he'd been self-medicating with alcohol. And I honestly do not think Ryan meant to take his life. I just think he got to a point where he got so drunk. I mean, the coroner said he had an incredible amount of alcohol in his system and this is something important to know about suicide. When people get to that point, they're not making a choice. They're not choosing between this or that. There's only one thing they can see. And that's a big, dark, black void that they don't want to be in anymore. And it's so painful. So, please, I hope you can take that message away and understand that they're not making a choice against you or against their loved ones. It's too painful to be here. So I want to tell you the difference between those 3 deaths and how I moved through them. So with the baby, I kind of did the be strong, replace the loss thing. Those are two of the big myths about healing. Of course, I got pregnant again just 12 weeks later, and that helped significantly. And that baby, Shane, was born, and he was fine. He's, thank God, still here. With Nicole was such a happy person that even though having her die in my arms and having, she was in my life every day. So I not only had her absence, the absence of the baby was different. It had been in my, in me physically. So I had that big separation, but Nicole was with me every day. So there were patterns of behavior that I had to change and get used to not having in my life. So there was that, but there was also, I felt that she was okay. I just knew right away that she was okay. And I had some metaphysical experiences, as did surprisingly some other people, particularly a woman who was a very conservative Baptist woman that I never expected to hear tell me she heard from Nicole the next day. That was shocking to me. But I didn't worry about her. Like I knew, and I should tell you that I am not, I'm a very spiritual person, but I do not subscribe to a religion, but I'm very connected to the spiritual world and my beliefs. And so I knew that she was fine.
Same here, by the way.
Yeah.
I've danced around it, but that's exactly how I describe it to people too.
Yeah, exactly. So with Ryan, and by the way, I'm involved with this podcast like 10 feet from where I was in the doorway on the phone with a police officer who's telling me my son has died. And I'd been through enough by this time that I knew, and I'd been doing enough spiritual work that I knew that the best way I could help Ryan, I could feel the heaviness. I could just feel it was totally different from Nicole. It just felt heavy and dark, like he was in not a place of retribution, but he was in spiritual darkness. And the best thing I could do for him was to send him love and to keep my own spiritual energy up. And so, the other thing that was different about Ryan passing was that he was 31. He was not living with me. So I didn't have that. I didn't have to extricate myself from the daily gift of seeing him every day, because he was already physically out of my life, whereas Nicole had been like right there. So it took some time, but I'll tell you a funny story. One day I'm sitting here in Tampa having coffee with a friend, and Suzanne Giesemann calls me on the phone, and she's out of breath. And if you don't know Suzanne Giesemann, please look her up online. I know
she's on the list for the show. She just doesn't know it yet. She's on the list. I just haven't reached out to her yet.
And I know several phenomenal evidential mediums. Jennifer Farmer is definitely another one.
Melinda Kushner, I have to throw that one out there because she is.
Oh, we could make.
She is one of my dearest friends. So since we're name dropping,
yeah, we should make a list sometime. Anyway, Suzanne's been out running. She stays fit all the time. She's out running and she's out of breath, and she calls me, and I'm like, "Hi." She said, she's laughing. She said, "Ryan won't leave me alone until I call you." I'm like, "Really? What's up?" She said, "He wants me to tell you that he's out of jail." And of course, she said, he doesn't mean jail. I mean, you don't go to jail and get punished if you pass by the way, know that there's no retribution. We're having an experience here. But if you pass in the middle of a negative experience, you need some help, some spiritual healing to get back to a place of stasis and understanding, the purpose of why you were here. And so I laughed and Ryan was laughing. And so he was just telling me that he's fine. And that I think she said that he was involved in working with people here who are thinking of taking their lives.
Oh, good.
So it was just really very interesting to hear that. So I wanted to share all that so that you understand that, every one of you is going to experience the death of your child in a different way. And that's okay. So not a good idea to compare losses, not a good idea to compare, certainly talk about your post-death experiences, but nothing is either right or wrong about the way that you're experiencing things, including the presence or absence of metaphysical experiences that you might have. I used to have a lot. Oh gosh, I wish I had this picture with me right now. I'll have to send it to you. Well, I'll tell you how you can see it in a minute. They've gotten in touch with me in some amazing, and when Brooke and I talk about evidential mediums, evidential experience, we're not talking about, your loved one's right by you and says they love you. No, that's nothing. Anybody can say that. It's when they say, it's when they send you a sign that has both their names on it, a street sign that has both their names on it, right after you've asked them to send you a sign.
Right. I mean, and you can always tell. And you know what's funny? I was going to bring this up earlier. So Marla and I met that it was actually at the end of November 2016. And I'm going to throw in my own interesting story because I believe that I was listening to my intuition and it brought me to where I needed to be at that meeting that night. But what I didn't know about that, so Suzanne was supposed to be at that meeting, but she was just going to talk. So Marla had said, come. Yeah, she had said, feel free to come. And, Suzanne's going to be here. But Jordan and I had purchased tickets to go back to spend, I think, so his birthday is November 29th. So I'm trying to remember if we were going to be there for his birthday and then through all of December or right around there. But the meeting was happening like the day after we were supposed to fly back to Indiana. And so we were like, we're headed back, home for the holidays. And then all of a sudden it was Suzanne has changed her mind. She's decided to do readings. And I remember Jordan and I sitting in, we were sitting in a restaurant and we were talking about it. And I was like, something is telling me that we need to be there, that night. I was like, we can always switch our flight. We'll just go back a day later than we had anticipated. I really feel like we need to be at this meeting. So we end up going to the meeting and, I remember standing there talking to you when Suzanne walked in, and I remember Suzanne kind of giving me just like this look. And what I found out from her later was that she had seen Logan standing there with us, but she wasn't going to say anything. And so she sits down and she does these readings and she brings through Logan. And I mean, everything. It was incredible. I mean, and I got into the habit of recording, and I still do record, any sort of experiences that I have. But I ended up recording that. Sorry, Suzanne, if that wasn't okay, but you know that I did. Because I mean, there are things that I can go back and listen to and just be reminded of, right? But she talked about so many things that just hit, like down to the crash, right? She said something about the crash and like his head thrusting forward being the way that he died. And I mean, he snapped his neck. The crash was so impactful that his neck snapped. And I mean, among a bajillion other ways that killed him. But I remember leaving that meeting and everything changed for us. Everything. Our belief system had completely turned. The idea that, there was something more out there changed. That's when I started getting into yeah. Oh, I mean, and that's the power, I think, too, of listening to your intuition, because had I ignored that, we would have missed that opportunity. And I don't think would have been led on the path that we were of understanding that he is still with us. And Logan is not a was, and to listen to that intuition. And it's, just it changed. It changed. I know at least my life. I can't speak for Jordan, but it was incredible. And that was the first meeting. So speaking of Suzanne and all of those types of things, that was the first meeting that we attended. And that was little over 2 months after he passed.
It's really important to take note of what Brooke just said, because we realize, I'm a shameless promoter of this idea that healing is at the intersection of the world of spirit and the world of form. There are people that will only look at the spiritual aspect and try to talk about that. There are people that will only do work here in the world of form with therapy or whatever. I feel the best path to healing is to accept them both. We're not, we I know you've heard this a million times, but we are literally spiritual beings having a physical experience. We're just here having an experience. This is all a story. Next time I'll talk about how I know that there's no such thing as the past or the future. I don't think we have time to get into that now, but I had a direct experience of that. But it's okay if you have a religious basis for having a particular belief. I know I have people in my family who think that it's wrong to get readings or to dabble in this or that. The best arbiter of information is your own intuition.
Yep. You
have been given the ability to decide what is a belief that sits correctly with you. And I will tell you, you can go to a conference, whether it's a secular conference, a religious conference, or a metaphysical conference, and you will hear 20 different speakers, and they're all experts. And I tell you, there are many of them who don't agree. What you need to listen to is what is resonating with your heart. No one is a better expert than you.
Absolutely.
Because you are. Does it mean that what you believe right now is the absolute truth? I don't think there are any in our world where we're filtering everything through a human perspective. There are no absolutes.
No.
Things that I believed 20 years ago, 10 years later, I was not subscribing to those. 10 years after that, I was not subscribing to those, or they didn't carry the weight they did. 10 years from now, I hope I've gone even further in my understanding of things. But wherever you're at, that's okay. But just don't think that you have to believe something or not believe it because someone else has told you that. Mm-hmm. You really, really need to listen to your own heart. A while ago, you mentioned choice. And that word just stuck out to me so much that I wrote it down, because choice is something that I always mention. Whether we heal, whether we don't heal, how we don't feel, how we interact with people, how we choose to not interact with them, whatever's going on, choice is the one thing we consistently have. Do we have control over what comes into our life? I certainly did not, where it came to my children passing. The choice I did have was, what I decided to do with it. I could have been bitter, angry, constantly asking why me, or talking about how unfair it was. And I'm not saying I'm all that for choices that I made, but the point is we do have choices. Brooke had choices, and here she is look at the podcast that she's built and other wonderful things that she's done. Oh my gosh. Talking about the world of spirit versus the world of form, she also helped get serious world of form legislation passed. Mm-hmm. It had to do with the way her son passed. So, she's really invested in both parts. You can make a choice to do that, or you can make a choice to be a victim and, grasp at that gold medal for having the worst possible thing that could happen.
I think a lot of people, though, feel that if they aren't a victim, if they don't stay tied to it, that they are, because I've been guilty of it, that they are,
I'll say.
letting their child down, or what was or their loved one, or what was the purpose of it? Or if I let go, then they're gone forever. And, I still need them to be here and they're not. And if I celebrate or move on, let me rephrase that. I don't ever say move on,
No,
because I don't believe we move on. We move forward.
right.
It is okay to allow yourself to still live. Like, do you know how many people have told me countless times, what would Logan want for you? Logan would want you to be happy. He wouldn't want you to be miserable for the rest of your life. Logan wants you. Let's not put it as a would be. Logan wants you to be happy.
Yeah.
He wants you to live your life and find joy. And I mean, here we are at the holiday season again, and I'm going, it's just not the same. And he wouldn't want me to just sit and live under my covers, until the first week of the year.
Yeah.
He wants me to enjoy it with our two other children and as a family and do the traditions, So,
And this thing,
I,
the past and the present, I'm not going to tell you right now because I know time is limited about this experience I had, but since you brought up the living in the past, there literally is no such thing as the only place the past and the future exists is as a mental construct that we have so that we can navigate in the physical world, in this world of form. There is no place that our children are. That was a story in this experience that we're having. So that story is not there anymore. Yes, it's a memory in our mind, but our children aren't there. They are in a different form, having a very present now experience with us. And if we want to still have a relationship with them, it's in the present moment. It's not back there. So I do hear this all the time. People think if they get better, that first of all, they're worried about approval, believe it or not. What will people think if I stop grieving my child? Okay.
Yep.
We never stop. Our grief looks different and feels different. I don't allow anybody to say that I am a bereaved parent. I'm not a bereaved parent. I'm a parent who's had children who have passed. I'm a parent who's had things happen that were out of my control, and I've dealt with them, and I've used what has happened to, hopefully do something better. Also, the idea of that stuff in the future that people talk about, I'll never get a chance to see my daughter graduate from medical school, or I won't see my son get married and give me grandchildren. I literally tell people, excuse my French, but that all that is shit we make up. It's literally stuff we make up.
Well, and that's why I spend a lot of time when I sit here and declare that I choose to walk forward. I choose joy. I choose to live. I always back it up by reminding people that doesn't mean I'm happy that my son is gone. And like you've said, sorry, my back's getting a little, like you've said, for the people who can't see me, I'm shifting yet again. I can't control. I have no control over the fact that Logan was taken from us. And I could continue to live there and live in the what ifs. And okay, well, what if we had left 5 minutes before? What if we had left? And I spent a lot of time in that. Honestly, in that journey, I have spent a lot of time in that, but I no longer choose to live there because it didn't matter. If I sit there and I'm like, what if? Well, what's that going to change? Absolutely nothing.
But that what if question can be super helpful. Not the specific question, but because there were so many things that I didn't know how to approach Ryan. He's the one who was the most important in this particular conversation. I did not know the questions to ask him. I didn't know what to say when I suspected he was self-harming. I just didn't know. I didn't know what I know now. So what I've done now is I've learned better things that I wasn't equipped to know in the past, and now I use them. I'm a I'm a crisis counselor on the crisis text line, and 2 nights ago, I had a woman ask me specific questions that were exactly what I wish someone had asked me when Ryan died, before he died. And then could I have prevented him from taking his life? Maybe. But what a gift now that I can give that to someone else.
Absolutely.
So I didn't tell her the circumstances. I certainly didn't tell her what the end result was, but I was able to take my mistakes and say, by the way, it's okay if you think he's self-harming. It's okay to not pretend that he's not, or ask him if he is. If you see evidence, address it and say, there are people that you can talk to. And, lots of times people who are hurting and who are, contemplating taking their lives, suicide, they feel shame and they don't want to, they can't bring themselves to talk about it to us because they feel they're a personal failure for not being able to deal with their problems, or it could be many reasons. But don't hesitate to actually speak about the topic. That's a really important thing.
Yeah. And I mean, it's a very bittersweet beauty.
Yeah.
To have learned all of that, but not just learned it, accepted it and allowed yourself to learn it, to allow ourselves to learn these things. And honestly, I feel the best honor we can give our loved ones or anybody that we may have lost, maybe not even physically lost, but, in terms of death, but are physically separated from, is what can we learn from those experiences, and how can we accept ourselves to both recognize it and not shame ourselves or guilt ourselves for what we didn't know at that time.
Yeah, super.
That took a lot for me because I'm like, well, shit, if I hadn't have been, so eager to move us to Tampa, maybe he'd still be alive. And if I hadn't done this, and I'm like, wait a minute, you were doing everything in those moments that you knew what to do.
Yeah. Never second guess decisions that you made in the past, because you made all those decisions based on what you knew at the time.
Yep, absolutely.
And where your own development was. And also, we literally know nothing. We know nothing about the big plan here. We're just kind of tripping along, hopefully maybe listening to our intuition or any kind of guidance that we're getting it can be from other people here in the world of form, but it might be a message that I've had several very strong messages that came to me that were just planted in my mind. And the difference because it's there like that.
Yep.
You don't even have time to think about it. It's just like there. I had one recently about AI, believe it or not. It's a really tiny short story. I'd been listening to a podcast about all the horrible dangers, and I'm like, lots and lots I've been listening to about AI, and I had this thought. I'm like, well, it can never replace humans because it's not really real. And instantly, this thought was planted in my head with some humor, actually, which said, well, you're not real either. And I'm like, holy shit, that's right. I tell people that all the time. These aren't our real body. I mean, our real selves. And by the way, that was a really important lesson I learned after my daughter died. We had an open casket, and we were in the funeral home, and my son said, do you want to go up and see her? And I'm like, oh, I don't know if I want to do that. I had just seen her a day or two before in the hospital. And he said, come on. And God, it was such a gift. I went up and I looked at her, and it took my breath away. And I said, oh my God, that's not Nicole. And it was so evident because I told you the kind of person she was, like Logan. effervescent
Mhm.
brightness and happiness and life. And her body was like a plaster, like it was a plaster container. It was so evident. And that was
I know.
a healing moment for me because I knew that and I had many things that happened after that confirmed it, but I could see the truth and the wisdom of these are just animated
I would love, there have been so many topics that I think are amazing for people to hear that we have not been able, I mean, down to that and Jordan's experience of seeing Logan, at the morgue and how he knew in that moment. And I don't want to tell the story for him. In fact, someone is here to say hi to you. So we're going to wrap this up and we will see you again. But
just give this quote real quick you tell your story and then I just
we'll give that quote and then we're going to make it into a t-shirt. But like I said, I don't want to tell Jordan's story for him, but he knew standing there looking at Logan and the morgue that was just a shell, right? And he had such a profound experience that day.
Yeah.
I mean, there are just so many things that I would love for you to come back. We'll talk off air, but love to come back and continue the discussion because we haven't really talked about, I know there's a story about your marriage that is important for people to hear, talking more about, experiences that you've brought up here, but haven't had the time, there wasn't the time. So I would be honored if you would come back and talk to us again. And before we go, I want to thank everybody for tuning in and I want to leave you until next episode with this wonderful quote that Marla has to share.
Yeah, it's so amazing. I give this to all my clients. It's by a woman named Vienna Farron. I believe she's a psychologist. And she said, who are you if your story begins to change? Do not be so loyal to your suffering that your healing doesn't stand a chance. Just says everything to me.
It really does. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. All right. So thank you for joining us for another episode. Marla, thank you for joining us and being our guest today. We will definitely talk to you again. And for everyone else, we will see you on the next episode of Trauma Uncensored.
Great. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.